I have been sitting on this theory for months, and I don't mean that lightly. I heard this for the first time, and I genuinely could not stop thinking about it. I kept going back through the movies, kept pulling on threads, and every single time, it just got deeper. So let's talk about Tony Stark, because I think Marvel has been hiding something since 2008, something that completely changes how you watch every single Infinity Saga movie. Tony Stark is a mirror of Victor Von Doom. I mean, Marvel may have literally built Tony Stark from the bones of Doctor Doom and planted him in the sacred timeline to keep the multiverse from falling apart. And if that's true, everything we thought we knew about Iron Man just changed. By the way, my name is Braden, and I've been following the MCU since day one. I went to school for film and animation, and right now I'm in the middle of building my own comic book universe from scratch. So when I say I understand how Marvel thinks, how they plant seeds years in advance, how they build toward a payoff most people never see coming, I mean that from the inside out. And Doctor Doom is my favorite character in all of fiction. So when I heard this theory, when Josh Robert Downey Nerds first broke this down, and I started connecting the dots myself, I genuinely felt something I haven't felt about Marvel in a long time. Hope. Like, they actually have a plan. Like, character comes first again. Like, we're standing at the beginning of something that's going to actually matter. And that feeling is exactly why I made this video. So let's start with Tony Stark, because I think sometimes we forget just how special this character actually was. Like, we've had 6 years of Marvel content since Endgame, and nothing has come close to filling that hole. And I don't think that's a coincidence. Tony Stark was the MCU. Every major moment in the Infinity Saga either started with Tony or ended with him. He saw Thanos coming before anyone else believed him. He carried that weight for years, alone, anxious, unable to sleep, while everyone around him thought he was being paranoid. And then he was right. But here's the thing that I kept coming back to when I first heard this theory. There's something underneath Tony that never really went away, no matter how much he grew. This obsessive need to control outcomes, this inability to trust anyone else to carry the weight, this certainty deep in his bones that if he ever stopped preparing, ever stopped building, ever let his guard down for 1 second, everything would fall apart. Pepper saw it, Steve saw it, we all saw it. We just never asked the right question about where it actually came from. Now, let me introduce you to Victor Von Doom. Doom is a king, he rules his own country, Latveria, and his people love him for it. He is one of the smartest minds in the entire Marvel universe, second only to Reed Richards. And that gap, as small as it is the thing that keeps Victor Von Doom up at night. The one problem he can never solve, no matter how powerful he becomes. The one wound his armor can never cover, because Doom doesn't just want to be great. He needs to be the greatest. And knowing that one man exists who is smarter than him, that one man will always be slightly ahead, is the thing that has driven him to the edge of madness his entire life. A futurist, an engineer, a scientist operating at a level that makes the rest of the Marvel universe look like they're still figuring out the basics. He fights gods. He has held the power of the Beyonders in his bare hands and shaped reality itself. And underneath all of that is a man hiding a tiny scar on his face that he refuses to let anyone see. One small wound he has carried his entire life, and rather than heal it, he built an iron mask to cover it forever. That's Doom, and he who remains, the man who built the sacred timeline, who pruned entire realities to maintain control, was so afraid of this man that he erased him from the universe you and I grew up watching. Think about that for a second. He didn't erase Doom because he could defeat him. He erased Doom because he couldn't. So what do you do with the most dangerous mind in the multiverse when destroying him isn't an option? You rewrite him. And that's where Tony Stark comes in. So let's put these two men next to each other for a second. Because once you see it, you genuinely cannot unsee it. Both of them built their armor by hand. I mean, think about what that actually says about a person. These are two of the most powerful, most resourceful men in the entire Marvel Universe. Tony Stark is a billionaire. Doom is a king. Either one of them could have had someone else build their suit, could have outsourced it, delegated it, handed it off, but they didn't. Because for both of them, the armor isn't just protection, it's an extension of who they are. It's the physical manifestation of the one thing that they both believe more than anything else. That if you want something done right, you do it yourself. That you cannot afford to be vulnerable. Not even for a second. Tony built his first suit in a cave with scraps because dying on someone else's terms wasn't an option. And Doom built his armor before it was finished, burned it into his own face in the process because waiting one more day to be protected wasn't an option. Same decision, different cave. And then there's Civil War, because I think Civil War is the moment in the MCU where Tony's Doom instincts are the most visible. Think about what Tony actually wanted. He looked at a world where superheroes were operating without accountability and decided the only responsible thing to do was to build a system of control around them, the Sokovia Accords. Tony believed in bureaucracy, but because some part of him knew exactly what an unchecked mind like his was capable of, he was trying to cage himself, and Doom would have laughed at that. Doom doesn't file paperwork. Doom doesn't ask permission from committees or governments or anyone else. Doom looks at a broken system and doesn't try to fix it from the inside. He replaces it entirely with something he controls. Tony wanted a cage, but Doom would have built a throne. So it was the same instinct to control the outcome. Same certainty that without the right person in charge, everything falls apart. Just a completely different idea of who that person should answer to. In the comics during Secret Wars, Doom gets his hands on the power of the Beyonders, essentially the power of God, and he reshapes all of reality. He doesn't destroy it, he saves it, his way, on his terms, because in that moment, he is the only one with the will and the intelligence to do what needs to be done. Tony Stark snapped his fingers and rewrote reality to save the universe. He just chose to rest instead of rule. And that right there is the only real difference between these two men. Not intelligence, not power, not even morality. One man had people worth dying for, and the other did not. Tony called his burden anxiety. He called it not being able to sleep. He called it post-traumatic stress. Doom calls it responsibility. Same feeling, different mask. And when RDJ walked out at San Diego Comic-Con as Dr. Doom, his first words weren't a speech. They weren't a monologue. They were 4 words. New mask, same task. Marvel never says anything by accident. So to understand what was actually done to Victor Von Doom, you have to understand what He Who Remains built. And I know some of you might still be catching up on Loki, so I'll keep this brief. But this part matters a lot. At the absolute end of time, there is a man sitting alone in a citadel, watching over every reality that ever existed. He Who Remains. The architect of the sacred timeline. The man who ended the multiversal war, not with an army, but with a timeline. Because if you control which version of history is allowed to exist, you control everything inside of it. Every hero, every villain, every cosmic event. All of it, curated, managed, and engineered to produce exactly the outcome that you want. And what he wanted was simple. A universe stable enough to last, predictable enough to control. One where no variant of Kang could ever rise up and tear everything apart again. So he pruned everything that threatened that. The Fantastic Four, gone. The X-Men, gone. Entire civilizations, entire histories, entire versions of people who had every right to exist, erased. Because He Who Remains decided they were too dangerous to allow to exist together. And that's really important. Because here's the thing that I find really interesting about this. The 616 universe, before the multiversal war, before He Who Remains rewrote everything, it had all of them. The Fantastic Four, the X-Men, the Spider-Man characters. All of these characters that we are only just now getting introduced to in the MCU. They were already there. They were supposed to be there. And I think that's actually Marvel Studios being a little meta with us. Because before Disney bought Fox, Marvel didn't own those characters. They couldn't use them. And now that they do, now that they finally have everyone back at the table, I think they're telling us through the story itself that this is how it was always supposed to be. The sacred timeline was never complete. It was always missing pieces. And He Who Remains stole his characters from the story the same way Fox stole them from Marvel Studios. And now they're coming back. He Who Remains pruned the Fantastic Four. He pruned the X-Men. But Doom was different. Because I think every time He Who Remains tried to erase Victor Von Doom, Doom found a way back. You don't erase someone like that. You can't. He's too smart, too powerful, too relentless. He Who Remains knew that better than anyone. So he made a different calculation. If you can't destroy the most dangerous mind in the multiverse, maybe you can aim it somewhere safe. So here's what He Who Remains actually did. He didn't kill Victor Von Doom. He rewrote him, using power that only exists at the absolute end of time. The kind of power that doesn't just change what happens, but changes what was. And He Who Remains reached into Victor Von Doom's life and unmade it. The memories of Latveria, the years of mastering magic, the throne, the identity of a man who had looked at a broken multiverse and decided he was the only one qualified to fix it. Gone. And in its place, a story. A billionaire's son, adopted from Latveria, born into privilege instead of forged through struggle, given every advantage, every resource, every reason to believe that the world was fundamentally worth protecting. Howard and Maria Stark didn't just raise a child. They raised an experiment, because that's what this really was. He Who Remains looked at the most dangerous mind in the history of the multiverse and asked one question. What happens if we give Victor Von Doom everything he never had? What if we take all of that genius, all of that obsession, all of that unstoppable need to control every outcome, and we just aim it somewhere good? Can we take the darkness of Victor Von Doom and turn it into the light of Tony Stark? And up until He Who Remains was killed, it worked. Every suit Tony built was Doom's obsession redirected. Every unilateral decision was Doom's instinct wearing a heroic mask. Every sleepless night, every anxiety attack, every moment Tony couldn't stop preparing for a threat that nobody else could see yet. That was Victor Von Doom bleeding through. But here's the thing about rewriting a person. You can't change the memories. You can change the name, the face, the history. You can surround him with people who love him and a world worth saving. But you cannot change what someone is at their core. Doom's mind doesn't stop. It never stopped. It just found new problems to solve and new ways to protect everything he couldn't afford to lose. And every time Tony pushed too far, every Ultron, every Sokovia Accords, every moment the darkness crept in, there was Steve Rogers standing right across from him, pulling him back. The one relationship that kept Victor Von Doom from bleeding all the way through. And then came Endgame. Tony snapped his fingers and rewrote reality just like Doom always would have. Just like Doom did in Secret Wars. The same instinct, the same godlike reach, the same certainty that he was the only one who could do what needed to be done. The only difference is what he chose to do with that power. He Who Remains got exactly what he designed. The most dangerous mind in the multiverse spent its final act saving the sacred timeline instead of conquering it. The experiment worked. But here's what He Who Remains never considered. What happens when the real Victor Von Doom, the one who remembers everything, the one who was never rewritten, finds out what was done to him? What happens when he discovers that someone reached into his life and stole it? That they took his identity, his power, his destiny, and used it to protect the very timeline that erased him? What happens when he finds out that the man who lived his life gave it away? I think that's what Avengers Doomsday is really about. And I think we're only just beginning to understand how deep this really goes. So now go back. Go back to 2008 and watch Iron Man with everything you know now sitting in the back of your mind. Because it hits completely different. That scene in the cave, Tony Stark, scraps of metal, a battery keeping him alive, that has always been framed as a redemption story. A weapons manufacturer finally understanding the damage he's caused, a man choosing to be better. But there's another way to look at that scene now. Because what Tony actually does in that cave is strip everything away and go back to his absolute core. No Stark Industries, no money, no resources, no team, just a mind and a problem that needs solving. And he builds something that has no right to work. That's Victor Von Doom's instinct firing for the first time without anything in the way. And I want you to sit with something for a second, because this is where things get really fascinating. In Doctor Strange, the Multiverse of Madness, we see that dreamwalking is real, that a sufficiently powerful person can protect their consciousness across the multiverse and inhabit another version of themselves. Wanda does it, and Strange does it. But what if Doom was doing it to Tony? Not constantly, and not in a way that Tony would ever notice, but in those moments, those specific moments where Tony's instincts pushed furthest toward Doom, what if that wasn't just residual memory bleeding through? What if Victor Von Doom, somewhere in the multiverse, was present, watching through Tony's eyes, feeling what it was like to live the life that was stolen from him? Think about Ultron. Tony builds a secret AI without telling anyone, designed to put a suit of armor around the entire world. No vote, no conversation, complete certainty that he was the only one who could see the threat clearly enough to act on it. In the comics, Doom builds an army of Doombots, robotic versions of himself. Not because he needs backup, but because the idea of a world without someone like him protecting it is something he cannot accept. So he manufactures that protection himself, on his terms, under his control. Ultron and Doombots are not just similar concepts. They are the exact same idea, born from the exact same fear. The world cannot protect itself without me. And if Doom was dreamwalking in that moment, if he was there when Tony decided to build Ultron, I think part of him recognized exactly what Tony was doing, because it's what he would have done. And then there's Infinity War. Thanos is fighting Tony's group on Titan, and before the fight really begins, Thanos looks at him and says something that takes on a completely different meaning through this lens. You're not the only one cursed with knowledge. Now, in universe, there's a straightforward explanation for that. After the Battle of New York, Thanos is briefed on the Avengers. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you that Thanos secretly knows Tony is Doom, because I don't think that's what's happening, but here's what I do think is happening. Thanos is cursed with knowledge because he sees the inevitable death of the universe and believes he's the only one willing to act on it. The only one with the will to do what needs to be done, regardless of the cost. Tony is cursed with knowledge because he sees threats coming before anyone else can and cannot make people believe him fast enough. He carries a weight nobody around him can feel. So those are the same curse. And if Tony is really Doom underneath, then that moment isn't just two powerful men acknowledging each other across a battlefield. It's two men who are both carrying the weight that only someone like Victor Von Doom would understand. Thanos recognized something in Tony that he couldn't name. Maybe we're only now just starting to figure out what that actually was. Now, also in Infinity War, before any of this, Tony is sitting with Pepper in the park, and he tells her about this dream he had. He says he dreamed that they had a child, a boy, and he tells her it felt so real he couldn't shake it. Now, we all watched that scene and assumed it was foreshadowing Morgan, but Morgan is a girl. Tony dreamed about a boy, and the rumors around Doomsday suggest that Victor Von Doom had a family in his timeline, a wife who was a variant of Sue Storm, and a son. What if that dream wasn't Tony's imagination at all? What if it was another crack in the wall between them? Doom on the other side, living his life with his family, and Tony on the other side, catching just enough of it to feel it as a dream that felt too real to explain. I mean, he specifically told Pepper that it felt so real because it wasn't his dream. It was Victor's life. And Tony Stark carried that weight for the rest of his life without ever knowing why. And then comes Endgame. Tony's retired, he has a lake house, a daughter, a life that He Who Remains always wanted him to choose. Safe, contained, and away from the fight. And then Steve shows up and asks him to come back. And Tony cannot say no, because Doom never could either. And here's where it gets really interesting. Everyone remembers that Scott Lang comes back from the quantum realm with the idea of using it as a time machine, but Scott can't figure out how to make it work. Bruce can't figure it out. Nobody can figure it out until Tony does, almost immediately. Now, in the comics, time travel is Doom's invention. That's not a fun little detail. That is canonically Victor Von Doom's contribution to the Marvel Universe. He built the first time machine. He understood time on a level that nobody else did. So when Tony Stark, a man who had never cracked time travel in his entire career, solves the problem that stumped everyone almost overnight, I think that's worth asking about. Because what if it wasn't entirely Tony? We know dreamwalking is real in the MCU. We know that a sufficiently powerful mind can project itself across the multiverse and be present in another version of themselves. And we know that somewhere out there, Victor Von Doom, the man who had invented time travel, exists in a reality where he remembers everything. Did Doom dreamwalk into that moment? And if he did, why? Because here's the thing. If Doom was present when Tony solved that problem, if his knowledge of time travel bled through in that moment, he would have seen exactly where it was going. He would have seen the snap coming. He would have known that Tony was going to pick up those stones and disappear, and he let it happen anyway. Maybe he couldn't help himself. Maybe a problem that fundamental, time travel, the manipulation of reality itself, resonated so deeply with his own mind that the connection happened involuntarily. Doom didn't help Tony. Doom just couldn't resist solving the problem. Or maybe, and this is the darker reading, Doom saw exactly what was coming and made a choice, because a dead Tony Stark meant one thing, that the experiment was over, and Doom could finally come home. So here's where we are. He Who Remains took the most dangerous mind in the history of the multiverse, rewrote him, renamed him, and aimed him at the sacred timeline like a weapon. And it worked. For 17 years, it worked. And now Victor Von Doom is coming to collect. And I need to say something here that I think a lot of Marvel fans are feeling right now, but maybe haven't put into words yet. We've had a rough few years. The post-Endgame era of Marvel has been inconsistent at best. Too much content, too many new characters shoved into stories that didn't have enough room for them, too many cooks, too many projects that felt disconnected from anything resembling a larger plan. And for a lot of us, people who grew up on this, people who sat in theaters for Infinity War and felt like they were watching something genuinely historic, that was hard to watch because we knew what Marvel was capable of. We remembered what it felt like when it was working. And then I heard this theory. And for the first time in a long time, something clicked back into place. Because this isn't just a cool fan theory about two characters who share similar traits. This is evidence. Evidence that Kevin Feige, even in the middle of all the chaos, even when it felt like nobody was steering the ship, was quietly, patiently building towards something that makes the entire multiverse saga recontextualize in hindsight. The Parliament meetings in 2014, before Disney even owned Fox, before they had the rights to these characters, Feige was already mapping this out, already thinking about how Doom fits into this story, already playing a game that most people didn't even know had started. And I've always said to not trust Kevin Feige is to say that what he built over the first 10 years of Marvel didn't matter. The man ushered in the Infinity Saga. He is the reason any of this happened. And I think the last few years weren't Feige losing his touch. I think they were the cost of him protecting the thing that actually mattered. The thing that he has been building toward since 2014. Avengers Doomsday and Avengers Secret Wars. And then Robert Downey Jr. walks out at San Diego Comic-Con and his first words, 4 words, land like a thunderclap. New mask, same task. It was a perfect moment. But I don't think it was just a cool line. I think Marvel was telling us exactly what this movie is about before a single frame was shot. New mask, the same task. The same genius, the same obsession, and the same unstoppable need to control every outcome and protect a world that doesn't fully understand what it owes him. Just a different mask. And the Russo brothers are back. The directors who gave us Winter Soldier, Civil War, Infinity War, Endgame, the people who understand better than anyone how to balance massive scale with genuine human emotion. They're back in the chair. This is not a coincidence. The Russo brothers understand better than anyone that the best Marvel stories are built on character first. And this story, the one that Marvel has quietly been building since 2014, is the most character-driven thing that they've ever attempted. This is Marvel course-correcting loudly, deliberately, with everything that they have. As someone who is building his own comic universe, who studies story structure, who understands what it takes to play the long game with characters and arcs and payoffs, watching Marvel do this is genuinely inspiring, because the lesson is that the best stories are patient, that the seeds you plant 10 years ago are the ones that matter, that character always, always, always comes before spectacle, and Marvel remembers that now. We are back. So here's what this theory is really about. Underneath everything. Nature versus nurture. Tony Stark and Victor Von Doom are the same mind, the same genius, the same impossible weight of feeling personally responsible for everything, the same armor, the same unrelenting need to fix a broken world. The only difference is what happened to them. Tony got Pepper, he got Rhodey, he got a world worth protecting, and people were dying for. You got Steve Rogers standing across from him every step of the way. Not as a variable that disrupted the plan, but as the very thing that made the plan work. Steve kept Tony human enough to reach the ending He Who Remains always needed. He Who Remains planned for Tony. He planned for Steve. He planned for the snap. What he never planned for, what nobody planned for, is the man sitting in another universe who remembers everything, who has spent years pulling on threads, tracing the outline of a life that was stolen from him. He Who Remains built the perfect experiment. He just forgot that you could rewrite a man's memories, but you cannot change what he is. And Victor Von Doom is coming to prove that. So next week, we're going to dive into the man who was always at the center of this, whether he knew it or not. The heart of the MCU. The one relationship that made the whole experiment possible. Steve Rogers. I'll see you there.